We're going to take a journey now a few hundred years into the past to the turn of the 16th 17th century. Galileo in northern Italy was turning his telescope up to the stars and finding the moons of Jupiter and doing his best to annoy church authorities. And meantime, up in Prague, a young astronomer, Johannes Kepler, was working at the court of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II and calculating the orbits and movements of the planets. Rudolf II happened to be an astrologer and an alchemist, and he really wanted accurate horoscopes, and that's why Kepler was actually there. And what Kepler did, we are taught today in our classes, in our science classes, that he discovered that planets move not in circular orbits but in elliptical orbits with varying speeds. We know the laws that govern those planetary movements. This laid the foundation for Newtonian science that was to follow. But what is less known is that Kepler made his discoveries as a result of his study of music. Not the kind of music that you hear when you listen to heavy metal, which is full of discords and other things that make our ears kind of twist. I'm sorry, I'm showing my age here. But this was a harmonious music which the planets played as they orbited the sun. Now, it was at the court of Rudolf II that Kepler worked with the Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe, who had assembled hundreds of observations of many of the planets, very accurate observations. And as a result of that, Kepler was able to calculate very, very accurately the paths that the planets followed. And this is what he found, actually, that the planets moved at varying speeds in elliptical orbits with the sun offset from the center. When the planet was closer to the sun, it moved faster. When it was further away from the sun, it moved slower. What did all this mean, Kepler wondered? Well, this is what he wrote. The eccentricities of individual planets originate in the prearranged plan of the harmonics between their orbits, which means that the planets all moved in ellipses that were predetermined by the music that they had to play. Now, the idea that planets generated a heavenly music as they orbited the sun was not a particularly new idea. It was 2,000 years old. Pythagoras came up with that idea because in the old school of Crotona, the Pythagoreans already knew that any moving body generated a sound. So if the planets moved, then surely they generated a sound of some kind, a music. Now, what the Pythagoreans also realized was that there were certain laws that governed whether two notes combined harmoniously or made a discord. And these were the laws of harmony. And any guitar player knows these laws, that if you actually put your finger on the string halfway down, you get an octave, 2/3 you get a fifth, 3/4 you get a fourth. These are well-known musical chords where the strings combine and the sounds combine harmoniously as long as the harmonic proportions are simple. If they're complicated, like 10/11ths or 12/13ths, you get a discord. But as long as the proportions are simple, you do get a harmonious sound. Now, Kepler recognized, of course, that harmony is a uniquely human concept derived from our human perception. And he writes, it is from the soul that the harmonies of the configurations obtain their formal being. In other words, our ability to distinguish harmony from discord is not learned. It's inborn in us. And it is part of our heritage for being human. And it is also found out there in the universe, in the movements of the planets. And this is the music that he discovered. Now, can't tell you exactly all the mathematics, except that the planet's angular velocity was found proportional to the frequency of the notes that the planet generated. He decided that Saturn, at its furthest approach, would have the note G, and therefore Saturn played G, A, B, A, G, Jupiter an octave higher, Mercury, which had the most elliptical orbit, 7 octaves higher than Saturn, and he found that it didn't all quite work. He was getting discords, so he adjusted the planetary parameters. He adjusted the distances, the velocities, so that he could get a perfect music. And these are the distances he found. The first two columns, furthest approach and the nearest approach of the planet in terms of the Earth's distance from the sun. And there are the modern values on the right. And you can see that the agreement, as Fred Hoyle, our illustrious British astronomer, said, the agreement is frighteningly good. Frightening because in terms of modern science, none of this makes sense. You know, modern astronomers don't believe in this kind of music and or these harmonies. So we're talking about something that really shouldn't make sense, and yet it does make sense. Lest you think that this actually is something which is unique to the first planets. After Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were found, other astronomers went and they basically wrote the scale for the solar system, which is a harmonic minor scale, which is maybe why our world is kind of a doleful, sorrowful place. Now, similar harmonics are also found in the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and extra-solar planetary systems. About 20 light years away, 55 Cancri has several planets which are also there, which also seem to have the harmonic relations. You find harmonic proportions in crystallography, not just astronomy. It's present in the anatomy of the human ear, in the superstring theory of elementary particles. Now, modern science embraces the concept of harmony, symmetry, elegance, order. You'll find every scientist agreeing with this as long as no purpose, meaning, or metaphysics is implied. That's a very hard line that very few scientists are willing to cross. Now, I suggest our present approach, where we deny the existence or purpose, is a one-sided approach that leads to an incomplete view of the universe. We learn the how, but we don't know the why. As well as that, this view leads us to feeling alienated from the universe, a loss of connectivity between ourselves and the universe. Now, Kepler's universe is not separated from the observer, but intimately involved with him. The same harmonic proportion that we hear and to which we resonate is out there. It's out there in the motions of the planets, in the structure of crystals, and it may turn out, if the superstring theory of matter turns out to be correct, that we will find this harmony in the very heart of matter. And I leave you with Kepler's last thought, which is, so I throw the dice and write a book for my contemporaries or for posterity. I do not care, it may take 100 years for my book to find readers. It took God 6,000 years to find an observer, probably more than 6,000 years. Thank you very much.